that feeling of anxiety, like, oh my gosh, I have to do everything right now. And I don't know where to start. And so that just builds and builds and builds. And know what it does? It like paralyzes us. Then we do nothing, like nothing.
Hi, friends. Welcome to Business Briefs, where we give legal bite-sized tips and business tips to you. Today, we have the amazing Erin Gerner. So Erin and I connected a while ago, and I truly thought she was on my podcast because we talked so long. She's so easy to talk to and just a beautiful energy that she spreads around her. She is literally a powerhouse, but she's also teaching powerhouse lawyers how to be lawyers without all the stress, because a lot of industries just come with a lot of stress. And talking to her really decompresses me. I love having these chats with her. And I know today you're going to be getting so much from the amazing Erin. She has a podcast, right, Erin? Powerhouse Lawyers.
I do.
And you're also a lawyer yourself. And now you're coaching
I am.
as well. But I feel like what you're coaching can extend beyond the legal industry because there's so much value to what you say. Erin, I've given a very brief introduction of who you are and, but please share with us what you do, what's your business, what's your elevator pitch?
Yeah, so I am Erin Gerner. Thank you so much for having me. First of all, I just adore you as well. And I love these chats. So I am a recovering lawyer. I'm no longer practicing. I practiced for about 7 years. I'm also a wife and a mom to 2 daughters. But my heart and soul is my company called Powerhouse Lawyers. And my goal and my soul's mission is to create community and connection for female lawyers and provide them that space. That's something that I never had when I was a baby lawyer. And I really want to provide the space for women lawyers to be able to come together and connect and form community. So to facilitate that, I host in-person live events, retreats, which are life-changing. I have a podcast that comes out weekly. And I also take a small number of one-on-one female lawyer clients that I help just kind of navigate, get them unstuck and get them rolling and stepping into the best version of themselves.
Gosh, I absolutely understand the need of you in our legal industry, but I want to pick up on a couple things. You said a recovery lawyer. And then also, what does that mean? And then how did you figure out the space for yourself? Like, what was the problem? And now you provided a solution for it.
Right. So I practiced law for about 7 years. I went to law school, like I went K through 12, then right to law school. And I am one of those people who went to law school and had no idea why they were going to law school. I just went because that seemed like the next best thing to do. And for a long time in my life and my career, I actually felt a lot of shame and like guilt around actually saying that, being like, well, I just went to law school because I didn't know what else to do. Like that just sounds so flippant, but truly there are a very large number of us who go to law school with really no understanding of what we're getting ourselves into. I was a first generation lawyer, did not have any lawyers in my family. We had, like high achieving people in the medical profession and doctors, but like no one was in the legal profession. So I was just thinking I was doing the next best thing. And so I get out, I'm drinking from the fire hose and was immediately met with just total like unalignment, like just stress and anxiety and all the things, big law. And then I ended up going in-house. And during that time, I became a mom and the push and pull became like out of control. And I did not have a community. I did not have other female lawyers who were showing me the way, who were saying like, hey, Erin, I totally get how you're feeling. Like this is a really tough time. Maybe have you thought about this, or there are other opportunities for you to practice in this way? I didn't know. I didn't have any more information. And so at the time, it really feels like this or that, like you're going to be a lawyer or you're going to be a mom. And so I walked away and decided to stay home. I had another child, but during that time, there was so much guilt and shame. You're a quitter. You couldn't hack it. What are you doing with yourself? Like all you are is a lawyer and now you're just sitting around as a housewife, like all of this like head trash. I mean, awful head trash, but it's seared into our mind how we're supposed to be lawyers and then how we are supposed to show up in this world once we graduate from law school and get into the legal world. And when you're doing something different, when you're taking a different path, the legal profession doesn't make you feel awesome about that. Like it doesn't make you feel awesome about it. So there was lots of trial and error. But what really started riding the ship for me and where I got a lot of clarity is when I hired and invested in a coach myself. And she happened to also be an attorney. And it was for the first time that I saw another woman's mind through my own and realized that I wasn't crazy, that I wasn't alone, and that with small incremental changes in my mindset, getting rid of stories that were not true, I could actually start to move towards and embrace who I was and where I wanted to go. And it just gave me, it was that first step of, okay, like, this is not a lost cause, right? Like, you're not just going to sit here and spin your wheels for the next however much, 30 years of your life, you like quitter of a lawyer or whatever. So also during that time, I actually got involved in a network marketing company, which was very out of left field for me, but it ended up being, I think everyone should be in sales at some point in their life. This was my little venture into sales, but what it was also a venture in was to entrepreneurship. And it put me in a position to exist in my wheelhouse, which was mentoring women to step into the highest version of themselves, because that is ultimately how you make an income in network marketing. Is not only are you marketing their product, but you are building an organization of other people who want to create an additional stream of income in their life and to create freedom and movement in their life. And in order to do that, you need to have a leader and be a leader to be able to empower them to do that. And so while I was kind of inadvertently stepping into my zone of genius, people just kept saying, like, Erin, why are you not coaching? And meanwhile, all of these lawyers kept just showing up in my life from the profession that I had, quote unquote, walked away from. All these lawyers kept showing up in my life, and the light bulb finally went off through another coach that I had hired and invested in. And she said, Erin, you know that you can help these women. Mm-hmm. And my first instinct was to say, oh, no, I can't. I'm not a lawyer anymore. Like, I'm not a lawyer anymore. Like, I don't practice law. Like, I can't help them. I quit. Like, again, head trash. But it just took me, again, just taking the steps of being like, you know what? Like, I've done a lot of work on myself. I've invested a lot in myself. I've studied a lot. And I actually have a unique understanding of these women and what they are going through in their everyday life as female lawyers. If they have a spouse, if they have, kids and a family, like, I have a unique, visceral understanding of what they are going through. And I also have the knowledge and the tactical tools to help them get off of the hamster wheel of life and start living life for them. And so once I started stepping into that space, it was just like God kept revealing and was just like, just one step at a time, one step at a time. And this retreat was truly born out of a dream. Like, I know this sounds crazy and a little woo, but I like legit had a dream about me on a beach with women, like doing yoga or something, like with the beach house in the back. Like, we were all together, like it was just crazy. And I got up and I was like, I'm having a retreat for female lawyers. That's what I'm doing. We need this space. We need it. We need to all get together. We've got to take them out of their environment. That is the key, is to get them out of the crazy law in life and to put them in a space that is relaxing, that allows them to think, to get some clarity, to connect with women who are just like them, who are going through the exact same things as them. And then, oh, by the way, all of these brilliant people are together and they're like, hey, can you help me with this? How do I grow this? Have you thought about expanding this? We can work together. Let me refer you this client. And then all of this magic starts to happen. So that's a very long-winded version of how I ended up with Powerhouse Lawyers, but it was truly just one step at a time and just leaning into that knowledge that I had my soul's mission as female lawyers and to help them, because it's me. It's the younger version of myself. And I know that there is such a need, and like, I will die on the hill of community and connection between female lawyers. It's just powerful.
Gosh, I love that. I love the vulnerability in that story too, because truly that is so, I think, symbolizes somewhat of my journey in the sense of I took 6 years off in between as well. And initially I'd be like, well, I still said it again right now. I took 6 years off. And it's actually, no, it's not like I'm sitting and doing nothing. I had kids during that time. I was working and, helping my husband in his marketing and his business. I was sitting on various different organizations and the charities and their boards. And then I was exploring a lot of creative avenues of, doing business in today's social media world and all that. And it all sets you up for the next step that you may or may not know. And, I think you're right. And it's not just unique to legal, it's also like medicine or any profession that you have just worked extra long in, or any those dinosaur professions that I call them, like the oil and gas industries, or they're lovely, but they're also very antiquated sometimes in their thinking processes. But they set up standards that are very antiquated, or very kind of like a little old school, where they're not thinking about having a mental health situation or having ability to have some life balance integration, going on. And it's really hard to break away from it. And it's a lot of work mentally to break away from it too. And so it's really nice that you have created that, avenue for other lawyers, and not just helping them maybe break away from it, but also just helping them navigate within their own legal industry and journey. And I know that you also help a lot of your clients with managing the overwhelm that comes in during the, as you're working and as you're managing life and families and whatnot, but at the same time, increasing productivity. And so how, with your experience and, knowing the demands of certain industries or just people in professions, even if you're working and you're, 9 to 5 can be really stressful too. What are some ways to manage your mental health during that time?
Yes, absolutely. And I will say first and foremost that that's such a great question. I'm glad we're talking about this, because not only does this apply to lawyers, I feel like this is just broad scope, because overwhelm lives in our head, and coupled with the fact that life is very busy. Like we were talking about before, we even press record, how we hate the word busy, but I really don't even know another way to describe, seasons of life that have a lot of activity going on. I mean, I don't know. Is that the PC way to say it? Seasons of life that have a lot of activity. But when that is happening, the overwhelm lives in our head. And it's every day it just gets more. You'll drive by and you'll remember one more thing. And it's it just starts to churn. And when that happens, you start to get that feeling of anxiety, oh my gosh, I have to do everything right now. And I don't know where to start. And so that just builds and builds and builds. And know what it does? It paralyzes us. Then we do nothing, nothing. And the key to overwhelm, every single time, the cure, action. Action, action, action. So how do you get into action? There are lots of really easy ways that we can do this. I am a huge fan of a brain dump. I encourage in fact, I do this with every single client. I've even had a client on my podcast talk about how life-changing this was and how she turned it in to her to-do list. And I'll tell you how she did it right now. So what I encourage my clients to do is to literally get out their journal, piece of paper or whatever, and brain dump every single thing that you have got going on: work, kids, personal, family, pet, fix the radiator, blinds, this, whatever. Get it all down on paper and literally just word vomit it, because truly that is the first cathartic part of working through overwhelm, is getting it out of your head onto paper. Because once it actually becomes a living, breathing thing, then you can start taking action on it. So now you've got your brain dump and you're looking at that and you can say okay, well, heck, I can cross that off. I don't need to do that. That's not even mine. It's not relevant anymore. The times, you can eliminate stuff. You can start to see okay, well, these are some things that maybe I could delegate. These are some things that I could get some help on. These are some things that I can push off to another time. And here are maybe some things that I can do right now, right now. And so once you get all your stuff, you say okay, pick the easiest thing on that list and go do it. I literally do not care if that is call the groomer and make an appointment for the dog. Done. Because once you've done that, your brain is okay, I got this. Okay, I got this. Now we got moving. Now we're moving. And you keep going. You're proving to yourself that you can start clicking things off. The brain dump is hugely powerful. What my client has done, she's taken it a step further. She does it for personal and for work, but she does one before she leaves the office on Friday, and that becomes her to-do list for the following week.
Mm.
So she's brain dumped all of her things that she needs to get done for her job, and she leaves it at the office. Like, she's not taking it with her to overwhelm and to stew in for the entire weekend. She's got it on paper, so she knows when she shows up to the office on Monday, she can start clicking off her tasks. And she's found that tremendously helpful. Another thing I love to tell my clients to do is to time block and say, I am going to work on this for 2 hours. I'm going to do this here. And take your calendar, even if it helps you to take your calendar on like a Sunday or a Monday, and plot out your week and go ahead and pencil in the stuff that you know are the non-negotiables, your appointments, your kid's soccer game, your dentist appointment, like whatever, client meeting, stuff you already know that's on the calendar. And then you can see the white space in your week and say, okay, I'm going to use those 2 hours to work on this. I'm going to use that hour to work on this. And you think that you're haphazardly doing this, but what you're actually doing is becoming more efficient and creating more free time for yourself. Because if you're trying to multitask throughout your day, it's not helping. You can't do everything well. So those are really two tactical tips that I love to give people on how to manage overwhelm, like in the immediate. Like if you are listening to this right now, like that is something you can get off of this podcast and literally go do right now and start to relieve some of that anxiety that you are feeling by just simply getting into action.
Amazing tips. And I truly agree with the whole brain dump and time blocking. It's really helpful. I actually love what your client does, because I also try to create my plan for the next week on a Friday. I personally don't like to do it on Sundays anymore because it's family time and it creeps into my family time. And it legitimately takes me a good half an hour if I am really being intentful. Is that a word? Anyways, so, it's being deliberate about it.
It's fine. It's your podcast. You can make up whatever word you want to. It's fine.
Anyways, and so I love doing it on Fridays myself. I think it's a great idea. And, those are immediate actions that we can take. And I want to talk to you about actions also in just a second, but what are some long-term ongoing actions we can take to manage the overwhelm? And as you say, the trash talk that's existing here, because that's what weighs me down sometimes, is the nonsensical, disparaging conversations that I have in my brain. And I think that's not just unique to me. A lot of other people have the same conversations.
No, it's not. And I think the first step to that is to become aware of what we are thinking and what stories we're telling ourselves. And in order to do that, we have to stop. We have to stop and we have to get still. And so over time, there needs to be some sort of outlet in place where you are getting still throughout your day and throughout your week to listen to your thoughts, because you can't rewire your brain, which is something we can do, right? Like when we are saying, like, we can change the neural pathways of our brain by repeatedly telling ourselves over and over and over again a story, right? Because our brain is only going to believe what we want it to believe and what we tell it. So we have to tell it a new story. So when those thoughts are coming up and we're aware, we have to stop and rewrite the story. But we can't do any of that unless you get quiet and still to even figure out what they are. Right. So we have to be able to go back to these creative outlets to be able to give ourselves the space to be able to think. It is an action tip, but it is something that has to happen over time. We are so overscheduled in our lives, and we are telling ourselves that we don't have time for us. Like, the cup is full for everyone else. You've got to empty out some space for yourself. And that, go back to what you like to do. Is that reading? Is it writing? Is it walking? Is it exercising? Is it dancing? And put that in your calendar and allow your mind to start to tap back in to the creativity and things that you love. You can't get out of the overwhelm and start to enjoy your life unless you are starting to bring things back into your life that give you joy and give you the space to do that. I drive in silence all the time. Like, all I do is drive in silence. That's one of my keys, like, to eliminating overwhelm. I'm not really sure if that adequately answered the question, but it's overwhelm is one of those things that I don't think is ever going to go away. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think that it's something that we deal with all the time.
Right.
So in order to manage it over time, you've got to start taking small, simple steps every single day to be able to turn your brain on to listen to when you're getting there. You can feel yourself starting to get there. But again, you have to get quiet with your thoughts to say, like, what is going on? Why am I losing it today at work? Why did I just lose it on my kids? I need to stop, turn off all the noise for a second and listen to my thoughts and be like, you know what? I am feeling like I'm getting really overwhelmed. What can I stop and do right now that's going to change that? Do I need to like get up and take a walk? Do I need to do a brain dump right now? Do I need to get into action and go do something? It's doing and recognizing those little things over time that is going to help you manage your stress level when it comes to overwhelm.
Such great tips. You know, I completely agree with you. I think even if you're doing art or something, or just meditating, even where you're cleansing that mind of yours or getting some clarity, because a lot of, I think driving also in silence is really powerful. I do that sometimes, not all the time, but if I feel like it, I'll do it. Like I'm listening to my body at that time.
And I tell lawyers to do that because they are so busy, because they're like, Erin, because if I go tell an attorney that she needs to implement like a 30-minute meditation practice, she's going to start laughing at me. Like, we're going to be like, that's not going to work. Right. Like, that doesn't work for my life. So you need to find what works for your life. And a lot of times that is literally just turning off the radio. And it's such an easy place to start. And you need to sit in the uncomfortable. Because it's going to be uncomfortable at first. Like, the thoughts are going to come through and you're going to be like, oh my God, like, and it's your job to sit there and to sift through and say, like, that's not true. I'm throwing that out. That's not true. I'm throwing that out. I'm choosing to think something else. I'm choosing to think something else. And it's literally like a muscle. You got to build it up. You got to practice. Every single time that happens, you have to train yourself to turn it the other way. And some days you're going to do a great job and some days you're not.
Yeah.
Like, it is a muscle, and those stories have been built up over time. However old you are, decades. It took decades to build those stories and to color that lens. So in order to unwrite that story, it's going to take some practice and some intentionality on your part.
Oh my gosh. I'm so glad you mentioned that the thoughts that come in might not always be like your aha moments where you're just getting epiphany after epiphany. That just may not be a thing. And it truly, like when I'm sitting alone, a lot of times, a lot of the stress thoughts are going through my mind. They're zipping through. Like I'm literally like going, like scrolling left, like I'm just going through, and it's just cascading through my mind. And it's a lot of the stuff that is on my to-do list, a lot of things that I feel like I need to do for growth, and a lot of things. You're right. But it's a great exercise because it helps you clear it out also. And then you can journal right after that. If you're being intentional about the whole silence part of it, you can sit and journal and do a brain dump at that point too, once you've seen all the things that are going through your mind.
And always ask yourself questions. Like, if you're like, is that true? The quality of your life depends on the quality of the questions you ask yourself. So when those thoughts come through and you're like, oh, well, like I can't possibly do that because this, and this. Well, is that true? And then if you're like, well, of course, because I've got blah, blah, blah. Well, is that really true? Like, ask again and keep asking yourself the questions and sit in that uncomfort, because on the other side of the discomfort is the breakthrough.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so true. I think, it's very, any season, any year, there's can be lulls and highs and, super activity going on. And there are seasons where you're just like, I know for myself, I'm just going, internalizing a whole bunch of stuff all around me. And finally, I literally just have a breakdown. Like, I'm not exploding on people generally. I might have like a little runway of nonsense and then a full breakdown.
You can see the engine start to speed up. Like, it's starting to get a little faster.
Yeah. I mean, like, I do a lot of this for a long time now. So I know there's a lot of like self-awareness in my brain. Like, I have a lot of self-awareness also. And so sometimes it's like, in retrospect, I'm laughing, but during the time, it's not funny at all, actually. And, it's really important I just went on a retreat for my business coach, and gosh, like right before I went on this retreat, I felt so much overwhelmed. And not because of the retreat, but just because of things that were happening. And it's not my mom things, it's not my work things, it's just life things.
Yeah.
And and then you're soaking in other people's energies also. And a lot of times you become that person that you are the go-to a lot of times too. And while it's an honor to be someone's go-to and it's such a privilege as well, but at the same time, you're becoming a sponge. And that you also have to have like a barrier of what's healthy and what's not healthy.
Absolutely. And those boundaries are so important in these seasons. I think there's two things that I want your listeners to take away. It's one, in whatever season you're in, it's giving yourself the grace and understanding that it is just that, a season, and it's temporary, and just leaning into the ebbs and flows of that season and not trying to grip on so tightly to try and control it and make it something else, and just knowing that it's temporary. And even if it seems wild and crazy and all that kind of stuff, you can still set yourself up to win in those times, right? In those times that it's, if you're just leaning into the ebb and flow and giving yourself the grace and compassion to know that that is okay, because that is how, I think that's another wonderful way to combat overwhelm, is just the acceptance of where we are in this phase in our life and not trying to fight that, because social media and society will like to tell us that we should be everywhere else, but where we currently are, you are exactly where you were supposed to be. You are not late. You are right on time. Like, you're right on time.
Someone needed to hear that.
Yes.
I felt it when you said it. So it's absolutely, I think that's a gem right there. That truly is a gem. Now we're talking about, reducing our overwhelm. Now, while we're reducing overwhelm, how do we maintain productivity? And does productivity always mean growth, or what does productivity mean at the end of the day?
Well, I think when you eliminate overwhelm, you naturally increase your productivity. The overwhelm that lives in your brain is actually decreasing your productivity because it's paralyzing you from doing the SHIT that you actually need to do that you're overwhelmed about. Like, it's this constant like circle, right? It's like this conundrum of like we find ourselves in, right? You become more efficient. When you're time blocking your schedule and you sit down and you say, okay, I'm going to write this brief. I need 4 hours to write it. How long do you think it's going to take you? 4 hours. But if you sit down and you say, okay, I'm time blocking this 2 hours, boom, you just got more efficient. You know what I mean? Like, and not decreasing the time that you need to get the job adequately done for the client, et cetera, like all of that caveat. But when you are time blocking and you're saying, okay, today I'm working on emails for this 45 minutes, then I'm going to move over here and do this. And I move over here and do this. Do you know how much more productive you are going to be?
Yeah.
Like, your productivity is through the roof, instead of you jumping from task to task to task to task and never mentally being focused on the one at hand. We're lawyers. We are super smart. We think we are professional multitaskers. Like, we literally like look up multitaskers in the dictionary and they've probably got like C lawyer, like we know how, we think we can do that. We can't, we shouldn't, and we don't need to. And it is decreasing your productivity.
Oh my gosh. Just so many thoughts are behind that, like billable hours and this and that, and being part of the big law firm, and then what their expectations are. And it's such a toxic culture that is passed down. And then you take it to your personal private practices also, because you don't know anything better. And then you want to stay in tune and in the same rhythm as everybody else in the industry. And man, I fought those battles when I first started my practice. I still sometimes fight them because I'm like, gosh, I totally practice differently. I do not have that practice at all. And the reason is because it's unhealthy. I want my associates to have a life, and I want them to have a productive family life too. And you shouldn't have to compromise both. Like, it shouldn't be a trade-off. It should be, how can we figure this out and have an integrated lifestyle?
If we want productive, happy lawyers, we have to start doing things differently.
Yeah.
There is a reason why there's a mass exodus from this profession. There's a reason at year 5, attorneys hit burnout and are saying, peace out. Like, we have to start doing things differently and focusing on mental health and allowing these people to be productive and not be so burned out that they can't function as humans.
Yeah, completely agree with you. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about quickly is the actual action part of it. We can make a plan. We can have these goals. We can try to manage ourselves. But if there's no action, because sometimes I find myself in the same lurch, I'm like, I just don't want to do it. I know I put a time block out for myself. My assistant put a time block for me. She's expecting this work done, but I just don't feel like doing it. How do you get out of that funk? Because man, one day is okay. 2 days is okay. Well, you can't go weeks and weeks like that because now you have zero growth, zero productivity again. Now you're on the other spectrum of no productivity because you're not doing anything. What do you do?
Well, this is the question that I ask. How committed are you to that goal? Like, how committed are you to being more productive, to growing your business, to growing your client base? How committed are you to that? Like, there's a lot of things that I don't want to do on a daily basis, but I know that they are necessary to grow and build my business and to grow and build me personally. Like, I journal. Do I want to sit down? Do I feel like I'm like perky to journal every single day? No. Like the people who like that look like rock stars, you think they want to be in the gym every single day on the treadmill? No. I mean, I freaking hate to exercise, but I do it because I know that it's going to make me healthy and increase the longevity of my life so I can be a great mom and and here for my kids. So my response to that is, how bad do you want the change? Like, how badly do you want something different? And if time blocking doesn't work for you, what does work for you? And let's do that. Like, it's not a one size fits all thing, but I think just making a commitment to yourself and then holding yourself to that commitment, and then also giving yourself grace and compassion when you do take a week and you're like, damn, I hadn't time block in 2 weeks. I got to get back on the horse. Get back on the horse. Don't beat yourself up about the last 2 weeks you didn't do it. Get back on it today and start doing it again. You can't go back. Let's move forward. So that's my advice on that, is just sometimes we have to force ourselves to do things that feel uncomfortable, because oftentimes the things that feel uncomfortable are the things that are actually going to work to change our lives.
And I'm going to add on to that. Great advice. And I'm going to add on a little bit more, because you're right. Not one size fits all. And sometimes, which is something I've had to do myself, is really do a self-assessment on the rhythm that I'm constantly on and then the patterns. So sometimes I have this pattern where I'm like hard for like a few weeks. And then I'm like so tired from working so strong and hard for 3 weeks. Like, okay, I need a week off. So if that's the pattern, then figure it out. And in your schedule, work it out in that way. And also bite-sized actions where you're saying, I'm going to give myself half an hour. If you don't get to all the emails, it's okay. Put it on another day of the week as well. So that way, you know that you'll get to what you need to get to. You don't have to complete everything, but the needle is moving. And that's the point. Like feeling accomplished. Like I feel accomplished when I put a check mark or I scratch off something on my to-do list, like mark it out. That line makes me feel amazing. Like it is.
And that is the key. That is the key. That, my friend, is productivity. What you just said is creating that feeling and that sensation within your body. That is the key right there. Action eliminates overwhelm every time.
Yeah, I agree with you. And, you might be in a funk, and you're right. Give yourself grace. Give yourself the ability to say,
and you can sit there. You are allowed to sit in the funk. Just don't stay there.
Right. Don't build a home there. I agree. This has been so great. It's always so nice to talk to you and just like decompress all the thoughts that are in my brain and talk about life. Like before we got on, we were actually talking about all the crazy changes that are happening and just momhood and kids and whatnot. So find your people, find the people like, Erin is great for lawyers because she truly understands that industry and she understands that niche. There are other people that are probably in your industry that also do retreats or do groups, coaching, mastermind. Find people. And even if you have to create your own, I had my assistant say to me yesterday, why don't you just create your own? And yes, it might be work, but you can just start with a simple networking. Like, hey, who wants to meet up? And do it on a platform that you feel is comfortable for you and legitimate for you also. So don't run away. Find the people that help and support you all the time. Erin, before we say bye-bye to you, I want to hear some things that are a little bit more personal to you. One of those things could be, what's the latest book you're reading or a podcast that you're listening to, aside from your amazing podcast too, which is Powerhouse Lawyers?
Yes. So I actually just finished Shoe Dog, the Philip Knight story of Nike. And if you have not read that, please go run out and do that. Like it was just, that's a great read. Podcast wise, oh my goodness, I love a good podcast. Like I am a crime junkie all the way. So,
I didn't know you were going to say that.
Oh my gosh. Like I love a freaking crime junkie. That is great. But what I actually really, I love Mel Robbins' podcast. She's great. Ed Milet is great. I listen to a lot of that kind of stuff, but I really do like a good, and also like of course, like as a lawyer, the people who are on death row and they're like wrongly convicted. And it's like this huge podcast, like an Adnan Syed thing on Serial or whatever. Like I eat that up. And I think it's like the lawyer in me that like dorks out because I actually understand legal mumbo going on. But yeah, I geek out about that too. So.
Oh, I know. I love that stuff too. And then that's actually a great tip. That actually energizes me. That fuels me. So if there's something that fuels you, especially if it's in your industry and you just are like, okay, I'm ready to tackle everything, go do that. Go do what you need to do. Give yourself that Rocky theme song if you need it. Like energize yourself, bring that fuel back and that joy back. If you're like, where'd it go? Which corner is it hiding in?
Oh, I tell people, I'm like, put on your walk-up song, get in your car or put it on in your house, like, and dance like a lunatic and you will feel like $1 million.
Yes. You're letting out all the stress and the tightness that is in the body. I agree with you. Erin, this is something I ask every single guest that comes through. It is, who is your anchor? What is your anchor?
Who is my anchor? My husband is my anchor. And I say this all the time. I am the hot air balloon and he's the anchor because I am always like ideas, dreaming big. This is where we're going, doing all this stuff. And my husband is down here as the anchor and he's like my integrator. And he's like, all right, babe, I support the dream, but we can't do this. And we've got to maybe scale here. So it is really, he's also an attorney, which has been like the greatest gift. We met in law school. So we've been together nearly 20 years. We just had our 16th wedding anniversary, but thank you. But he really does understand. Again, he has that visceral understanding of what it's like to be an attorney. And he knows the work I'm doing. He knows how powerful it is. He knows how necessary it is. And so he allows me to have all these big, wild dreams. And then he's in the basket right there, making sure we don't like go up to the
fly away.
Yeah.
That's awesome. How can someone reach out to you and connect with you?
Yes, absolutely. So you can go to my website, ErinGerner.com. You can also connect with me on social media. I'm at Erin Gerner on Instagram and Erin Gerner on LinkedIn. It's GERNER. So you should be able to find me pretty quickly. But if you need anything, head over to ErinGerner.com. That's a super easy way to find me or anywhere on social media. And thank you again so much for having me.
Oh, it was lovely. We had so much fun talking before and after. And I know that everybody listening will literally walk away with some tangible tips. So that's always my goal. So thank you so much.
Awesome. Thanks again.